Once upon a time, there lived a great king and his queen in the land of Agume. They had two children, a boy and a girl. The children were known as Eze and Ada. Eze was the senior child, while Ada was next to him. Eze was the heir apparent to the throne and was being groomed for the role. They lived happily because the king was a kind and humble person. His wife, the queen, did also command respect from their subjects because she was caring and humble too. The king had ruled for almost 12 years when one day the queen became ill, and he had to send for all the medicine men in the kingdom to come to the palace to find out what was wrong with the queen. The medicine men showed their divination, and each told the king that it was destiny that was taking its toll. They tried to save the queen, but at last she gave up and did not survive it. The king was devastated. It threw him off balance, and he was at a loss for what to do. With the whole kingdom for him to run and two children of 5 years and 3 years old to take care of, respectively, it was too much for him to bear. What kind of temptation is this? He asked no one in particular. After the burial of the queen, he appointed those that would take care of the children to enable him run the kingdom properly. He appointed 2 men and 2 women. The men were to take care of Eze, while the women were to take care of Ada. By the end of that very year, the king realized that he needed a woman by his side to be able to run his kingdom efficiently. So he chose another queen, a princess of royal blood from the neighboring kingdom of Onuma. By the following year, she gave birth to a baby girl, and she was named Nebi. 2 years later, she gave birth again to her baby. This time it was a baby boy and was named Kobone. While the king was ruling his kingdom, it was not easy for his first children, Eze and Ada. They were all living with themselves happily until the new queen arrived and started giving birth to her own set of children. She hated the sight of Eze and Ada. She dismissed the 2 men of the royal guard taking care of Eze, and Eze was left to take care of himself alone in the big palace. In the presence of the king, the queen would pretend to be very nice to the children, but as soon as they left the king's presence, she would resort to maltreating the innocent children. One day, the queen sat on her bed and with her heart full of hatred started feeling that the presence of Eze in the palace was a threat to her own son. She did not bother about Ada because Ada was a girl. It was Eze that was the problem, being the king's heir. My son has to be the heir apparent to the kingdom, and not Eze. She would say aloud to herself, I can't toil and struggle to rule this kingdom with my husband, and then I will allow another person's son to become the king. It's not possible, she would be saying, muttering to herself. All those things were passing through her mind, and she started thinking of what to do to Eze so that her son would become the heir to the throne. The king came up and tried to make things okay for the whole family. But the queen's mind was something else. The queen now resorted to her plan. She decided to use her manservant, her own personal manservant that she brought when she was coming to marry the king to do the job, because she trusted their loyalty. She put him in charge of Eze, and within a short time, Eze at the age of 15 fell sick. He fell sick. The king was worried that his heir apparent he had spent a lot of time to groom and bring up was seriously sick. He had lost his first wife when the children were young and felt he was not doing his duty well as a father towards his first children properly. Eze, my son, he said, my hair, don't be sick. You are my love and all I've got. Please, son, get well quickly. The queen was in the room at the time the king was speaking and was annoyed at the words of love her husband was exhibiting towards Eze before those who were in the room. She was shuffling her feet unladylike to show her annoyance and dismay. 5 months later, Eze was still terribly sick. He sent for his sister Ada, who was already growing very fast. He sent for her when the queen was not around to talk to her. He now said, Ada, my sister. He was crying. He was crying. He held her hands closely. You have seen with your own eyes, Ada, how wicked our stepmother is behaving towards us. I want you to be strong, but if something happens and I don't survive, make sure to take good care of yourself and let Father know what is happening. I don't know how to reach Father now because I can't stand. He talked to his sister. He advised the sister. They talked at length before she left and went back to her room. He passed away a few days later. Ada cried, and the feeling of loneliness washed through her. She no longer had a mother, a brother. The only one she's having now is her father, who is so busy running the kingdom and focusing on his wife, the new queen, and her children. She cried and sat down muttering, oh, Father, you are so busy with your kingdom and your wife and children. You've forgotten me. Oh, Father. After her brother's death, Ada was now alone, barely seeing her father at all. Her stepmother locked her up in a small room that looked like a cell. Imagine a princess of royal blood being locked up and treated like a common slave. Ada turned 18 and a great beauty to behold, turning the heads of all that came her way. Her stepmother was not worried about her because she was not the heir to the throne and did not pose as a threat to her son. But when Ada turned 20, she was still unmarried and being locked up in that small cell. She was only brought out to see her father by the wicked queen when the queen so desired. She had no time to tell her father anything that was happening because she was always there, and each time she wanted to open her mouth to talk something about the situation, the queen would hush her and hurriedly take her away to be put back in the room cell. It was terrible. And Ada had turned the cell now into her home as she had been there for more than 5 years now, sleeping in a small cell room without her father knowing. Nobody knew, only the queen and her notorious servants. Her stepmother kept guards outside the door and no one could get in there to see her. One day, she was standing by the window looking out into the palace grounds when she saw her mother's personal maidservant passing by and attracted her with the wave of her hand. She could not talk because if she happened to speak, the guard at the door may hear her and wonder what she was doing. The man at the door was always listening, paying attention to what was happening inside the room. The maid servant was now an elderly woman, whom they called Dede. Dede was surprised to see Ada by the window of the small room and gave a sign that she was going to come back to see her when she was done with errands. About 30 minutes later, Dede returned to where Ada was, and they hugged one another affectionately. Talking, he's been murmuring, and I hushed her and told her. And I told her everything that had been going on since her stepmother came into the palace to marry their father. She told Dede that Eze's death was also connected to her stepmother because Eze had told her certain things about it all. But sadly, he was not able to protect himself from the queen's wickedness. Dede at last promised to do something about it, to help Ada out of the situation because she loved the first queen so much for her kindness and caringness towards the citizens of the community. And she was willing to help her child out of any dangerous situation she was facing. They called the loyal servants of the former queen and told them all Ada had been passing through. They were surprised and shocked from that they have just heard. And from that day onward, they put their heads together to make plans to help Ada so that she could live a happier life. The following week, the king sent for Ada, his daughter, and told the queen that as on that day, Ada must be presented in any occasion the women in the palace were holding. He had not been seeing Ada among the people, among the women in the palace, and he ordered them that they must allow Ada to be in the midst of the women each time they were holding such occasions or events in the palace. The queen was furious, but there was nothing she could do about it. She had to obey the king's command. While they were thus attending one of such gatherings, a young king, a very, very attractive young king, approached the king and told him that he needed a wife and he would love to marry Princess Ada. The king was happy to hear that because the young king, his kingdom was a flourishing one. And what would he not give to make his daughter Ada the happiest princess in the world? The entire inhabitants of the palace quickly spread the rumor, and the news went abound. And the joy on Dede and a group of servants who were very close to the first queen at the palace knew no bounds. But the present queen did not like what was happening, so she approached the king. My lord, why are you allowing Ada to marry the young king when you know our daughter Nebi is supposed to be the one to marry first? She said to the king. What makes you think that? The king asked, looking at his wife in a different light now. Could it be all what the former queen's maid Nebi had told him was true after all? He thought within himself. I'm the reigning queen, and my daughter deserves to get married first. And not Ada, she replied, pretending to sniff in a way that would make the king to succumb and give her what she needed. But the king had become suspicious of her by now and thought it was better for his beloved Ada to get married and go away from the wicked queen to build her own home. Ada is my first child, and she will be the first to get married. Go now and start making preparations for my beloved daughter, he commanded authoritatively. The queen was furious. She stormed out of the king's presence in anger. You shall see, she vowed. The next day, the queen started making plans on what to do to make sure that her daughter, Nebi, married the young king instead of Ada. The king came and wanted to speak with his prospective bride, Ada, one-on-one. And as they sat down discussing, the queen was standing somewhere. He saw the intent at which the king was looking at Ada and was jealous. He walked straight to meet the young king. I think it's time Ada goes back to her room, she said, smiling deceptively at the young king. The king was surprised at the unladylike manner in which the queen was attending to him. He got up and made to leave the palace. But Dede was watching. Dede was standing a distance away without the queen noticing her. As the king moved towards the entrance to leave the palace, she intercepted him. She bowed down respectfully before him and said she had something to tell him. The young king granted her audience and Dede introduced herself, then went on to tell him the situation Ada was facing in the palace. She explained all Ada had been passing through. She told him the present queen would go to any length to prevent him from marrying Ada if he did not do something about it. So the two of them talked at length, and at last the young king said they would meet and map out a plan to make the marriage a successful one. Meanwhile, the queen on her part had started dressing her daughter elegantly to compete with Ada. She wanted the princess to capture the eyes of the young king. She would dress Nebi in flamboyant dresses and parade her all over the place each time the young king came to the palace. While Ada was still locked up in the room. Dede, with the help of those servants loyal to the former queen and the king, planned an action to counter the queen's plan towards Ada. The queen had brought in one of her stooges, loyal to her, to be in charge of serving Ada's meals. They poured a powdery substance into Ada's meal so that Ada would fall sick. They wanted to poison Ada's food. But Dede, who had sent spies all over the place to monitor the queen's and her relationship with Ada, got to know about it on time. She monitored them, and as soon as the food was taken to Ada, she appeared at the window and watched the servant leave. When the servant had gone, she called to Ada and through the window spoke with her. Ada, do not eat that food. It has been laced with poison. She said, hold on, I will get you another food to eat. So she collected the one the servants had served her and brought in another one through the window. She kept the first food in a safe place away from anyone. Each time food was brought to Ada by the queen and her servants, it would be taken away and replaced with another one by Dede, the maid servant. Dede, saying all these, advised Ada to feign being sick so that the queen would think her plans were working. So as soon as Ada knew this, Ada started feigning to be sick. She pretended to be sick. That she would hold her stomach, hold her body everywhere, and lie on the bed as if she was almost dying. And as soon as the queen noticed this, she confronted her husband. My lord, she said, as though deeply concerned, we can't afford to lose this young king. Ada is very sick. And you know the date of the marriage is getting nearer. Barely a week to go. The worried king turned it over and replied, don't worry, my dear. We still have a whole week left. Ada might become well by then. All right, my beloved husband, she said. Otherwise, I would have suggested that he gets married to Nebi if our health did not improve, instead of losing out on the young king entirely. Let's see how it goes, said the king. At the end of it all, if Ada did not get well, we can do as you suggest. That will be it, she replied, and fled from the king's presence. Ada, on her part, pretended to be getting worse. She would do as though she could not stand, and so it was until the marriage day arrived. The queen had resolved with her husband that Nebi would be the one to marry the young king whom they did not know, had planned what would happen on the day with Dede and the other loyal servants. When the day arrived, food was taken to Ada by the queen's wicked maid, and the queen locked the door where Ada was to prevent her from coming out or anyone going in there to see her. The palace was a beehive of activities, everywhere decorated. Nebi was dressed for the occasion, and it was time for the brides to be led in to unite and tie the knot with the groom. Meanwhile, Ada had been smuggled out of the room through the window. And she was dressed. She was dressed properly. And the food they had brought to her that morning was put inside a covered dish and carried along. She was dressed by Dede and the other loyal servants, and they led her to a room without the queen knowing. And the kitchen was ready. When the palace master of ceremony announced for the bride to join the groom for the final marriage to be done, 2 doors sprang open at the same time, and the surprised audience watched as 2 brides dressed in marriage attires walked down the room towards the groom, standing waiting. The surprised old king said in a deadly loud voice, "What is going on here?" It was as though the audience got woken up suddenly from a deep slumber. There was a deadly silence. The young king smiled at what was unfolding before him. "Open the veils," the old king commanded. "Who are these? Who are these people? My daughter Nebi is supposed to be getting married today. What is happening? What is this?" The father looked around and ordered the servants leading them to lift off the veils. The servants leading them lifted off the veils, and behold, there stood Nebi and Ada waiting to get married to the young king in the presence of everyone. The people of Aguma had never seen such a thing before in the entire history of the kingdom. The king was in a dilemma as to what to do now. The shocked queen stood up to preside over the matter and started to speak. "Since it is obvious that the 2 sisters are here already, I will advise the senior Ada to step down for her younger sister to get married, because she has been ill all along and the rights of the marriage has all been transferred to Nebi, her sister," he said. Murmured the crowd in disagreement. But the king said from his throne, "Let the groom make his choice, my queen." The queen sighed and sat down back on her throne, knowing the groom would eventually choose Nebi, her daughter, because she had done underground work. The young king turned to look at them and said, "I will make my choice, and after that, I will beg the king to make a simple request from him." The king agreed and gave his consent. It was now time for the young king to make his choice. "My choice of our queen is..." He paused as his mind darted briefly back to the queen mother, begging him to marry Nebi in place of the senior girl Ada with gifts. He shook his head and thought such a woman would make a horrible mother-in-law. "My choice of wife is Ada," he shouted. He announced to the horror of the queen, who had thought she had won him over with the gifts. Oh, she almost fainted. There was a thunderous applause. "My next request is I want Dede to come forward and tell us what she knows. She has something to say." Dede moved forward, bowed to the king respectfully, and spilled the bean. She narrated how poisoned meals were given to Ada and how the loyal servants of the palace had helped to nullify the evil intentions of the queen. At the end of it all, she brought forward the meal that was given to her dad that morning as confirmation of the poisoned food. After the marriage ceremony was conducted that very day, the queen was brought forward and told to eat the food she had brought to be given to Ada if she was really sure that there was nothing inside it. But the queen mother refused to eat it. And the king commanded his servant to forcefully shove the food into her mouth and down her throat. She swallowed it, and within minutes, she was wriggling in pain. She had put a large amount of the poison in the food to kill off Ada on that very day, but instead she paid the price. That was how the crowd watched the elegant, wicked queen die a horrible death. That's the end of the story. Subscribe, like, and share the videos. Don't forget to stick around for the coming ones. Thank you very much.